Chapter 1, The Beautiful Station. The first thing Chief Structural Engineer Amara Vilas noticed about Vale and Crown Station was its beauty. The second was that she could not find the emergency stairs. The station hung above the blue-white gas giant Orivane like a jeweled ring. Its outer habitat arc curved for nearly 20 kilometers, wrapped in transparent domes and silver support ribs. Gardens floated beneath artificial gravity fields. Water moved through open channels in the ceiling, breaking into slow droplets before gathering again in sculpted basins. The central concourse was large enough to contain a small city. Light entered from every direction. Music drifted through the air. Thousands of travelers moved beneath suspended walkways that seemed to rest on nothing at all. Amara stopped in the middle of the arrival platform and looked up. "Impressive," said the alien official beside her. His name was Hesh Talarin. He belonged to the Avaran, a tall, narrow species with smooth gray skin and 2 sets of eyelids. He served as Vale and Crown's Director of Civic Operations and had spent most of the tour watching the human delegation's reactions. Amara nodded. "It is." Hesh waited for more. Amara kept looking. The station's main dome rose nearly 300 meters above the concourse floor. Delicate bridges crossed the open air between commercial towers. Passenger lifts moved silently along curved tracks. Decorative support columns branched like trees beneath the upper galleries. Nothing about the station appeared heavy. That was part of the problem. Behind Amara stood 3 other members of the Human Commonwealth Inspection Team. Fire Systems Specialist Bako Ndilovu, Transit Engineer Petra Kovacs, and Civil Safety Analyst Rafik Darian. All 3 had stopped talking. Hesh noticed. "You expected something different." Amara glanced toward him. "I expected less glass." The director smiled. "A common human reaction. It is not a criticism." "Of course." Amara looked toward the nearest wall. "Where are the emergency exits?" Hesh's smile remained in place. "The primary exits are marked throughout the station." "I saw the main transit doors." "Yes. I mean emergency exits." He looked toward the concourse. "There are numerous exits. Dedicated emergency routes." Hesh paused. "Passengers may use any available route." Amara looked back at him. "That is not the same thing." The director's expression changed slightly. "Not offense, confusion. What distinction are you making?" Bako stepped closer. "If the lifts stop working, how do people leave the upper levels?" "The lifts have independent power." "If that fails?" "They have 2 independent power systems." "And if both fail?" Hesh considered the question. "They have never both failed." Bako looked at Amara. Amara did not return the look. She was still studying the upper galleries. "How many stairwells serve the West Commercial Tower?" Hesh checked his tablet. "Stairwells? Yes. There are several service passages." "How many?" "I would need to ask the architect." Amara looked toward him. "The station is occupied by more than 200,000 people. During peak cycles. And you do not know how many stairs are in one of the largest towers. The lifts are the primary means of movement." "That was not my question." The director's inner eyelids closed once. Amara had already learned that this meant discomfort. They continued the tour. The station's central market occupied 6 levels beneath the main dome. Every level opened onto the same vast interior space. Shops lined the edges. Restaurants extended over the void on narrow terraces. Passenger lifts moved between levels in transparent shafts. No railings interrupted the view except waist-high barriers of clear composite material. Petra examined one of them. "What load is this rated for?" Hesh looked toward her. "Load." Petra placed one hand on the barrier. "How much force before it fails?" "It is extremely strong." "What number?" The director checked his tablet again. "The manufacturer certified it." "To what standard?" Hesh's hesitation returned. "It was certified by the manufacturer." Petra waited. "So the manufacturer decided how strong it needed to be." "They are respected." "That does not answer the question." Hesh looked between the humans. "You keep asking for standards." "Yes," Amara said. The station was designed by master architect Salun Vey. Hesh said the name with obvious pride. "The Vey family has designed orbital habitats for 11 generations." Amara nodded. I read the brief. Then you know his reputation. I do. His designs are used throughout compact space. I know. Hesh spread one hand toward the soaring concourse. This station is his masterpiece. Amara looked upward again. The structure was beautiful. That had never been in doubt. Who reviewed his calculations? Hesh's hand lowered. His calculations. Independent structural review. Master Vey approved the design personally. I understand. Then why would another architect need to review it? Amara took a moment before answering, because people make mistakes. The director looked genuinely startled. Master Vey is not merely a person. Bako coughed into one hand. Amara ignored him. What is he then? He is one of the greatest living architects in the compact. That still sounds like a person. The director's voice cooled. You believe your engineers would have improved his work? No. Then why question it? Because checking work is not an insult. To the Avaran it would be. Amara studied him. That answer explained more than he probably realized. They entered the Eastern Transit Hall. This section of the station handled freight personnel, maintenance crews, and long-distance passengers. The architecture was less decorative, more practical. Amara preferred it immediately. Then she noticed the ceiling panels. Bako. He was already looking. I see it. Hesh followed their gaze. What? Bako pointed upward. Those wall and ceiling finishes. What about them? Are they fire-rated? Hesh frowned. The material does not ignite easily. What temperature does it tolerate? I do not know. How quickly does it produce smoke? It is decorative composite. What gases does it release when heated? The director looked irritated now. Why would it be heated? Bako stared at him, because fires are hot. Hesh's inner eyelids closed again. The station has a fire response division. How long does it take them to reach this hall? Less than 6 minutes. If the corridor fills with smoke in 2. It would not. Based on what test? Hesh said nothing. Bako moved toward the nearest wall panel. He did not touch it. He only examined the seam. Where are the fire barriers? The what? Compartment walls, fire doors, smoke separation. The station is open by design. That is what worries me. Hesh turned toward Amara. Is this how human engineers conduct all diplomatic visits? Usually we wait longer before becoming unpopular. Petra almost smiled. Rafik did not. He was studying the crowd. Amara noticed. What is it? He looked toward a broad corridor leading into the transit hall. How many people can this section hold? Hesh answered more confidently. Approximately 11,000. And the exit capacity? The confidence vanished. The corridor is very wide. That is not a number. There are several routes. How many people can clear the area in 5 minutes? Why 5? Because after that, smoke, panic, pressure loss, or structural damage may make the original routes unusable. Hesh looked at him. You assume multiple failures. Yes. Why? Rafik answered calmly. Because emergencies rarely ask permission to remain simple. The director stopped walking. The human delegation stopped with him. Around them, travelers continued moving through the station. Families, cargo crews, merchants, children running ahead of their parents. No one paid attention to the discussion. Hesh lowered his tablet. I believe I understand the problem. Amara doubted that. He continued. You believe Vale and Crown Station is unsafe. I have not said that. You have asked about fire, collapse, evacuation, power failure, and structural weakness. Yes. You have questioned the architect. Yes. You have questioned the builders. Yes. You have questioned the station authority. Yes. Yet you claim you are not calling it unsafe. Amara folded her hands behind her back. I am saying I cannot determine whether it is safe. That is the same accusation. No, it is not. Hesh's voice hardened. The station has operated for 23 years. That tells me it has not failed yet. It has served billions of passengers. That tells me it is busy. There have been no major disasters. That tells me you have been fortunate. The director stared at her. Fortunate. Amara nodded. Maybe the design is excellent. It is. Maybe the materials are stronger than necessary. They are. Maybe every system has enough redundancy. They do. Then show me. The director said nothing. Amara gestured toward the station. Show me the load calculations. The evacuation model. The fire resistance tests. The emergency power design. The inspection reports. The maintenance records. The independent review. Hesh looked almost offended by the list. You expect documentation for all of that? Yes. Why? Because the station is full of people. That answer seemed to confuse him more than anything else had. They completed the tour in silence. By the time the delegation reached the administrative tower, Hesh had requested the station's construction records. He expected the humans to be reassured. Instead, the records created more questions. The architect's original design existed. The construction plans existed. Material orders existed. Contractor certifications existed. There were maintenance logs for lifts, air recyclers, docking systems, and gravity controls. What did not exist was a single document defining the minimum safety requirements the station had been expected to meet. No standard emergency exit width, no required fire separation, no mandatory structural reserve, no universal occupancy limit, no rule for redundant life support zones, no independent building inspection. Every major decision had been left to the architect, or the contractor, or the station authority. Amara sat at the conference table and read the same section 3 times. Finally, she looked up. What safety code governed construction? Hesh stood across from her. The station complied with all applicable requirements. Which requirements? Docking compatibility, atmospheric integrity, power interface regulations, traffic control law. Those are operational standards. Yes, I mean building codes. Hesh's inner eyelids closed. There is no direct translation for that term. Amara glanced toward the others. Bako leaned back in his chair. Petra stopped scrolling through the plans. Rafik looked at Hesh. No minimum construction law. Construction law concerns ownership, land use, and contractual responsibility. No safety code. Architects are responsible for safety. Who verifies that responsibility? Their reputation. No one spoke. Hesh seemed to take the silence as disbelief. You must understand, an architect who designs a failed structure loses all professional standing. Amara looked at him. After it fails. Yes, and after people die. The director's expression shifted. That is an emotional way to describe professional accountability. It is an accurate one. Hesh straightened. How does humanity handle this? Amara turned the station plans toward him. We assume reputation is not enough. You distrust your architects. We distrust everyone. Hesh stared. Bako added, including ourselves. Amara highlighted one of the station's main support junctions. On Earth, the architect does not decide alone how much weight this must carry. Then who does? Engineers, regulators, material testing laboratories, independent inspectors, sometimes insurers, sometimes fire authorities, sometimes accessibility boards, sometimes local governments. Hesh looked increasingly alarmed. How many people interfere with a single structure? As many as necessary. That sounds impossible. It is often irritating. But why tolerate it? Amara looked through the window at the station beyond. Valen Crown glowed beneath the gas giant. Its domes reflected blue light. Its towers curved with impossible grace. Thousands of people crossed its bridges without ever wondering what held them up. Because a beautiful building can still kill everyone inside it. Hesh followed her gaze. For the first time since the tour began, pride disappeared from his expression. Not entirely, but enough. He looked down at the plans. What do your building codes require? Amara considered the question. Depends on the building. That is not helpful. No, but the principle is simple. She tapped the display. You can design almost anything you want. Almost. As long as it meets minimum requirements. Minimum beauty. No. Minimum efficiency. No. Minimum structural quality. Partly. Hesh waited. Amara looked at him. Minimum chance of killing someone. The director did not respond. The phrase sounded crude, human, almost insulting beside the elegance of the station, yet he kept looking at the support junction. Later that evening, the human team returned to its temporary offices. Petra closed the door behind them. How bad? Bako answered first, I do not know. Rafik nodded, that is the problem. Amara opened the station, records again. Nothing we saw proves the station is unsafe. No, Petra said. It proves nobody required it to be safe in any specific way. Bako looked toward the concourse below. They have fire crews. After the fire starts, they have rescue teams. After something collapses, they have architects. With no independent review. Rafik sat down. They have consequences. Amara looked at him. What? They regulate through consequences. He leaned forward. If a structure fails, the architect loses reputation. The contractor loses business. The owner pays compensation. The government investigates. But it all happens afterward. Petra understood. They never turned failure into a rule. Amara nodded slowly. That was the difference. Every civilization suffered disasters. Every civilization investigated them. The compact punished people who caused them, but each disaster remained an individual event, a bad architect, a careless contractor. A rare accident. Humanity had done something stranger. Humans had taken the lessons from one failure and imposed them on buildings that had not yet been designed. One staircase too narrow became a minimum width everywhere. One fire that spread too quickly became required compartment walls. One roof that collapsed under snow became a load calculation for every future roof. One inaccessible exit became a rule no builder was allowed to ignore. Human building codes were not expressions of trust. They were memory enforced by law. Amara opened a new report. At the top she wrote, Preliminary Structural and Life Safety Review of Vale and Crown Station. Then she stopped. That title was too narrow. The station was not the real problem. It was only the first example. She deleted the line, then wrote another. Preliminary Review of Galactic Construction Safety Practices. Petra read it over her shoulder. That sounds diplomatic. It is. What do you actually want to call it? Amara looked through the window at the beautiful station. The support ribs gleamed. The bridges floated. The crowds moved beneath them. She thought of all the questions Hesh could not answer. Then she typed the title she knew would never survive official review. The galaxy never invented building codes. Chapter 2. No two buildings alike. The Human Commonwealth Inspection Team expected Vale and Crown Station to be unusual. It was not. That discovery came slowly. At first, the station appeared to be an isolated problem. A prestigious architect, a permissive construction authority, a culture that treated professional reputation as sufficient oversight. Chief Structural Engineer Amara Vilas believed the solution would be straightforward. Review the station. Identify missing safeguards. Recommend corrections. Then continue with the diplomatic assignment. 3 weeks later, she had requested construction records from 27 worlds. By the end of the second month, the Human Commonwealth had assembled the largest comparative survey of galactic architecture ever attempted. The results were worse than she expected. Not because the galaxy built badly, because it built differently every time. The first city Amara visited was Harun's Rest, a coastal capital on the moon of Telvith. Its buildings had survived seasonal storms for more than 6 centuries. The local engineers were proud of that record. They should have been. The oldest towers had wide foundations, flexible support frames, and layered exterior walls designed to resist wind-driven debris. Amara spent 2 days studying them. Then she crossed the city. The newer residential district had none of those features. She stood beneath a narrow apartment tower while rain moved horizontally across the street. The building swayed visibly. A local engineer named Tavik Or noticed her watching. It is designed to move. How much? Within acceptable limits. Amara looked toward him. Whose limits? The architects. Is there a local wind load standard? The Coastal Guild publishes recommendations. Required recommendations. Tavik seemed confused. A recommendation cannot be required. Then what happens if a designer ignores it? If the building survives, nothing. And if it does not? The architect is held responsible. Amara looked up at the occupied tower. Again, afterward, always afterward. On another world, fire specialist Bako and Dilavu inspected a hospital complex. Its surgical wards had independent air supplies. Its power system had 4 layers of redundancy. Its medical gas lines were protected behind sealed walls. Bako called it one of the safest hospitals he had ever entered. Then he asked to see the emergency stairs. The hospital had one. It served 23 floors. The primary evacuation plan relied on lifts. The hospital administrator explained that the lifts were extremely reliable. Bako asked what happened if smoke entered the shafts. The administrator replied that smoke was not expected to enter them. Bako asked what prevented it. The answer was silence. Transit engineer Petra Kovacs visited an orbital school complex above the planet Neurath. The classrooms occupied 3 rotating rings. Each ring could isolate itself during pressure loss. Emergency seals closed in less than 3 seconds. The life support system was excellent. The evacuation system was not. All 3 rings emptied through the same transfer hub. A single damaged junction could trap nearly 9,000 children. Petra asked why there was no secondary route. The school's designer looked offended. The primary route has never failed. Petra stared at him. That is not what redundancy is for. Civil safety analyst Rafik Darian reviewed crowd planning at a pilgrimage center on Keledrin. The complex welcomed almost 2 million visitors during one local season. Its public plazas were enormous. Its ceremonial halls were beautiful. Its entrance routes were carefully controlled. Its exits were not. The final courtyard narrowed into 2 ornamental gateways. During normal movement, they worked perfectly. During panic, they would become funnels. The physics did not care which species was trapped. Rafik requested the center's emergency crowd model. No such model existed. The local authorities had evacuation maps. They had security plans. They had medical response teams. They had never calculated how quickly the population could actually leave. When the inspection teams returned to Vale and Crown, Amara covered an entire wall with their findings. The pattern was difficult to explain because there was no single missing technology. The galaxy understood structural engineering, fire suppression, atmospheric containment, materials science, load transfer, emergency medicine. It possessed excellent examples of all of them. What it lacked was consistency. One building exceeded anything humanity would have required. The next ignored risks humans had regulated centuries earlier. One architect designed generous safety margins. Another optimized every component until nothing unnecessary remained. One government required material testing. Another trusted manufacturers. One station divided itself into pressure zones. Another allowed one hull breach to threaten half the habitat. Every decision depended on the person making it. Amara stood before the wall of reports. Hesh Talarin joined her. For weeks, the director of civic operations had defended Vale and Crown Station. Now he looked less certain. You have identified flaws in many structures. Not exactly. He looked toward her. These reports describe unsafe conditions. They describe inconsistent conditions. What is the difference? A flaw is a specific error. Amara gestured toward the wall. This is a system with no floor. Hesh's inner eyelids closed once. I do not understand. Petra approached carrying another set of plans. Look at these 2 residential towers. She placed them beside one another. The first had 3 protected stairwells. The second had 1 open stair. The first had fire-resistant floors. The second used decorative composites. The first contained emergency lighting connected to independent batteries. The second assumed the main grid would remain active. Hesh studied both. Which architect was correct? That is the wrong question, Amara said. One must be safer. Yes. Then why not require everyone to copy it? Because buildings are different. Hesh looked frustrated. You say the galaxy lacks standards. Then you say buildings should not be identical. Standards do not make buildings identical. Then what do they do? Amara pointed to the first tower. This architect decided 3 stairwells were appropriate. Then the second, this architect decided one was enough. A building code would not tell them the towers must look the same. It would tell both of them how many people must be able to escape. Hesh considered that. So the rule concerns performance. Sometimes, and sometimes design. Yes, that seems contradictory. It often is. Bako joined them. Codes are full of contradictions. Hesh stared. You say that as though it is acceptable. They are written by committees. Petra nodded. That is their natural state. Amara ignored both of them. The important part is not that every building follows the same blueprint. She looked back toward Hesh. It is that every building must clear the same minimum safety threshold. The director walked slowly along the wall. The survey contained schools, hospitals, apartment towers, factories, orbital stations, government halls, freight terminals. Each had been designed by qualified professionals. Most had long records of successful operation. Several had won architectural honors. Hesh stopped at a report from the coastal city. The Storm Tower has stood for 47 years. Yes. Then perhaps the architect was correct. Maybe. Your report still calls the wind calculations inadequate. Because the calculations used only the strongest storm recorded at the time. What else should they use? A larger one. Why? Because records are not limits. Hesh frowned. You design for events that have never happened. Yes. How much larger? That depends on the code. Which depends on what? Historical data. Engineering judgment. Acceptable risk. Occupancy. Importance of the building. Sometimes politics. Hesh looked troubled. That is not objective. No. The answer surprised him. Amara continued. Safety is rarely objective. The equations are. The acceptable probability of failure is not. Hesh looked back at the station beyond the window. Then who decides? Society does. Through engineers. Engineers advise. Governments decide. Inspectors enforce. Courts argue. Builders complain. And after enough time, everyone forgets why a particular rule exists. Hesh turned toward her. Then how is that better than our system? Because we can look it up. The first formal briefing to the Galactic Compact took place aboard Valen Crown Station. Representatives from 42 worlds attended. Master Architect Salun Vey appeared in person. Amara recognized him immediately. He was older than Hesh, with pale gold markings along his face and ceremonial bands around both wrists. The room became noticeably quieter when he entered. Hesh had not exaggerated his reputation. Several delegates stood, others bowed. Salun acknowledged them, then took the seat directly opposite Amara. You have inspected my station, he said. We have. And dozens of other structures. Yes. Your conclusion is that our architects cannot be trusted. Amara had expected the accusation. No. Then state your conclusion clearly. She activated the main display. The words appeared above the table. No two buildings alike. Salun looked unimpressed. That is architecture. Not visually. Amara changed the display. Two hospitals appeared. One had protected evacuation corridors, the other did not. Two schools. One contained redundant pressure zones, the other did not. Two orbital markets. One had progressive collapse resistance, the other did not. Your architects disagree on whether people need the same basic protections. Salun studied the examples. Different conditions require different solutions. Agreed. Then your comparison is meaningless. No. Amara brought up occupancy numbers, fire loads, atmospheric risks, structural systems. The buildings were not identical, the danger was. Different solutions are acceptable. Different minimum outcomes are not. Salun leaned back. You believe safety can be reduced to regulation? No. She answered too quickly for him to interrupt. I believe regulation can prevent the same preventable failure from being repeated indefinitely. The architect's eyes narrowed. Preventable failure. Amara displayed a historical human archive. A theater fire. A bridge collapse, a factory disaster, an apartment tower failure, a school destroyed by poor construction. The images appeared one after another. No bodies, no sensationalism, only damaged structures and dates. These happened on Earth. Salun watched silently. Each changed how we built. A fire produced exit width requirements. A collapse produced material standards. A poisoned building produced ventilation laws. An inaccessible public space produced accessibility requirements. A failed foundation produced soil testing rules. Salun looked toward her. You converted tragedies into restrictions. Yes. You prohibit future architects from making their own judgments. We prohibit them from repeating specific failures. That assumes the lesson is universal. No. That is why codes change. The room stirred. A compact delegate raised one hand. Your rules are temporary. All rules are temporary. Then why call them law? Because temporary does not mean optional. Salun rose from his chair. The movement silenced the room. He walked toward the display showing Vale and Crown Station. My station has stood for 23 years. Yes. It has suffered no catastrophic failure. Yes. It has received more than 3 billion visitors. Yes. You have found no structural defect. Not yet. The architect's expression hardened. Then your objections are theoretical. Amara looked at the elegant station model. Yes. For the first time, Salun seemed caught off guard. She continued. That is the point. He said nothing. We do not wait for the building to collapse before asking how it might collapse. We do not wait for a fire before measuring the exits. We do not wait for a pressure breach before deciding whether one damaged corridor can isolate half a station. We make theoretical objections because the alternative is practical funerals. No one moved. The phrase hung over the table. Amara had not planned to say it. She suspected the diplomats would remove it from the official transcript. Salun looked toward the station model again. You expect architects to design around every imaginable catastrophe. No. Then where does it stop? It stops where society decides the remaining risk is acceptable. Which you admitted is not objective. Yes. Then your codes are political. Of course they are. A murmur passed through the room. Amara leaned forward. Building codes are a civilization deciding how much preventable death it will tolerate. That decision cannot be left entirely to the person being paid to finish the building. Salun's face became unreadable. You believe builders will sacrifice safety for profit. Sometimes. You believe architects will make mistakes. Always. You believe inspectors are wiser. No. Then why give them authority? Because mistakes are harder to hide when several people must agree. The meeting ended without consensus. Several delegates requested copies of the human codes. Others objected that the documents were too large to be practical. One representative discovered that a single metropolitan region on Earth maintained thousands of pages of construction rules and declared the entire species administratively unwell. Bako told him many humans agreed. Master architect Salun Vey left without speaking to Amara. Hesh remained. He stood before the human disaster archive. The dates covered centuries. What happened to these architects? Some lost their licenses. Some were prosecuted. Some were already dead. And the buildings? Rebuilt. He looked toward the line connecting each disaster to a later regulation. Your system still required people to die first. Amara did not defend it. Yes. Hesh looked at her, surprised. Then it is not as advanced as you claim. No. The answer came quietly. It is only better than forgetting. 2 days later, the human team received permission to begin voluntary safety assessments of compact public structures. No regulation, no enforcement, no legal authority, only advice. Most station owners declined. A few accepted for insurance reasons. Others wanted access to human markets. Hesh asked Vale and Crown Station to participate. Master architect Salun objected. The station council overruled him by 1 vote. Amara's team began with the central market. They measured exits. Tested smoke movement. Reviewed crowd capacity, modeled pressure loss. Mapped load paths. For the first week, they found nothing catastrophic. Several recommendations. No imminent danger. Hesh appeared relieved. Then Petra reviewed the outer transit ring. She called Amara at 0240 station time. Her voice was unusually controlled. I found something. Amara sat up in bed. How serious? I don't know yet. That answer woke her faster than an alarm. What is it? The outer ring was expanded 11 years ago. I saw the plans. No. You saw the architect's plans. Amara was already dressing. What did they build? Something cheaper. A pause, and the station's load model was never updated. Amara stopped. Which loads? All of them. Outside her window, Valen Crown Station continued to glow above Orivane. Beautiful. Busy. Unaware that one of its most important structures might no longer match the calculations that claimed to keep it standing. Chapter 3. The Market That Fell. Petra Kovacs did not use the word collapse when she called Amara. That was deliberate. Engineers learned early that some words changed a room before the evidence justified them. Collapse. Evacuation. Failure. Unsafe. Once spoken, they became the conversation. Petra had found something serious. She did not yet know what it meant. By 0257 station time, the human inspection team had gathered inside the outer transit ring's maintenance control room. Chief Structural Engineer Amara Vilas stood over a projected model of Valen Crown Station. Fire Specialist Bako and Lavu occupied one console. Civil Safety Analyst Rafik Darian stood beside the emergency routing display. Petra had already opened 4 separate sets of construction records. None agreed. Hesh Talarin arrived moments later. He looked as though he had dressed while running. What happened? Petra pointed toward the outer ring. Nothing yet. Hesh stared at her. Then why was I summoned? Because the structure currently carrying 32,000 people may not match its approved design. The director stopped moving. Amara looked toward Petra. Start at the beginning. Petra enlarged the original construction model. Valen Crown Station's outer transit ring had been added 11 years earlier to handle increased passenger traffic. The architect's design used a repeating network of curved support frames. Each frame carried part of the ring's mass. If one failed, neighboring frames were supposed to absorb the load until repairs could be made. Redundancy. Not enough by human standards, but present. Petra opened the construction procurement files. 6 months into the expansion, the contractor changed suppliers. Hesh frowned. That is common. Yes. The replacement alloy met the required strength. According to the manufacturer. It was certified. By the manufacturer. Hesh's inner eyelids closed once. Petra continued. The new alloy was strong enough for the original frame dimensions. Then what is the concern? They did not preserve the original dimensions. The model changed. Several support members became thinner, others were hollowed to reduce mass. The changes looked small, they were not. Hesh leaned closer. Why would the contractor alter the frame? Cost. Petra opened the financial records. Material prices had risen during construction. The contractor reduced the quantity of metal used. The architect approved the visual changes. The revised supports preserved the station's appearance. They did not preserve its load behavior. Hesh looked toward her. Master Vey approved this. No. Petra selected the approval line. His design office did. That is the same thing. No. The approval had been issued by a junior design associate. Salun Vey's signature appeared only as the office authorization. No evidence showed that he had personally reviewed the altered calculations. Amara stepped closer to the model. Was a new structural analysis completed? Petra changed the display again. No. Hesh stared at the records. That cannot be correct. It can. The modification was legally approved. Yes. Then calculations must exist. They do not. The director looked toward Amara. Perhaps they were archived elsewhere. We searched. Perhaps the file was lost. Then the station is still operating without proof. The ring can carry its current loads. Hesh looked toward the transparent wall. Beyond it, passenger trains moved through the outer ring. Freight lifts, Crowded platforms, restaurants, viewing galleries, 32,000 people during normal operation, almost 50,000 during peak transit cycles. "What do you recommend?" he asked. Amara did not answer immediately. She studied the altered supports. "Petra, what is the current load margin?" "I cannot calculate it accurately without material samples." "Estimate. Under ordinary use." "Yes. Probably acceptable." Hesh exhaled. Petra did not stop. "Under impact, thermal damage, or local support loss." "Silence, how bad?" Amara asked. "I do not know." "That is becoming a recurring phrase," Hesh said. Amara looked toward him. "It is better than pretending certainty." Baco opened the station's fire records. The outer ring also carries fuel lines for the transit system. Petra nodded, and if a support fails near one of these junctions, the line can rupture. Hesh stepped toward the display. "The fuel is non-volatile. Under normal pressure. And during a collision." Baco enlarged the thermal model. "Heat weakens the altered alloy faster than the original specification." Petra looked toward Amara, "Much faster." Rafik brought up the evacuation routes. "The outer ring has 6 major exits." Hesh nodded. "That exceeds the station plan. 4 pass through the same structural segment." The director's expression changed. "If that segment fails, we lose most of the evacuation capacity." No one spoke. The outer transit ring had not been built recklessly. Every individual decision had seemed defensible. A cheaper alloy, slightly thinner supports, a design office approval, no independent review, no requirement for updated calculations, no inspector with authority to stop the project. Each choice looked small. Together they had changed the structure, and no system had forced anyone to examine the combined result. Amara looked toward Hesh. "We need the ring closed." The director stared. "Immediately." "Yes. That would halt half the station's passenger traffic." "I know. Thousands of ships are scheduled to arrive." "I know. Can you prove the ring will fail?" "No." Hesh's voice sharpened. "Then you are asking me to shut down critical infrastructure based on uncertainty." Amara held his gaze. "Yes." The answer angered him. She understood why. Valen Crown had operated for 23 years, the outer ring for 11. No collapse, no visible deformation, no warning alarms. Closing it would disrupt commerce across dozens of systems. It would damage the station's reputation, possibly permanently. Hesh placed both hands on the table. "I need more than this. You have altered construction records. Not evidence of immediate danger. You have no updated load model. Not evidence of immediate danger. You have insufficient redundancy. Still not immediate danger." Amara looked at him. "What would qualify?" "A measurable defect. A crack. A deformation. A failed component. Something real." Petra turned toward one of the live sensor feeds, then froze. "Wait." She enlarged a vibration trace from the ring's west junction. The line showed a repeating oscillation, small, barely above background. Amara leaned closer. "How long?" "First recorded 14 months ago." "Trend." Petra opened the history. The oscillation had grown, slowly, almost invisibly, then faster during the past 6 weeks. Hesh studied the display. "What does it mean?" Petra did not answer immediately. Amara did. "The ring is moving in a way the monitoring system does not understand." The director looked pale beneath his gray skin. "Can we inspect the junction?" "Not while it is fully loaded." "Then reduce traffic." "Close it." Hesh looked toward the operations display. 32,000 people. He opened a channel. "Begin controlled evacuation of the outer transit ring." Rafik interrupted. "Do not call it an evacuation." Hesh looked at him. "Why?" "Because we do not know how the crowd will react." "What should I call it?" "Temporary service interruption." "That is misleading." "It is also true." Amara nodded. "Use routine maintenance language, stop new entries, redirect trains, clear one zone at a time." Hesh hesitated only once. Then he issued the order. The station responded smoothly at first. Arrival traffic diverted. Passenger lifts changed routes. Public displays announced a temporary systems inspection. People complained. They did not panic. Within 12 minutes, the outer ring population had fallen below 20,000. Within 20, below 12. Then a cargo freighter clipped docking pylon 17. The impact was minor. The pilot corrected immediately. Under any normal circumstance, the collision would have produced an insurance claim, an inspection, and several hours of delay. Instead, the pylon transferred a sharp lateral force into the outer transit ring. Petra's vibration display spiked. Amara. I see it. A warning appeared, then vanished. The station's monitoring system classified the movement as temporary. The engineers did not. The west junction shifted 9 millimeters, then 14, then 23. Hesh stared at the numbers. Is that dangerous? Petra was already calculating. The original frame could tolerate it. And the one they built? I do not know. A sound moved through the maintenance room. Low, metallic, too deep to come from a speaker. Everyone felt it through the floor. Amara looked toward the live camera feed. One of the curved supports had changed shape. Not much. A line that had been straight was no longer straight. Close the pressure doors, she said. Hesh reached for the controls. Baco stopped him. Not all of them. What? If you seal the wrong sections, you trap people inside. Rafik brought up the remaining crowd map. 7,000 passengers still occupied the ring. Most were moving toward the central station. 2,000 were heading toward exits connected to the west junction. Amara looked at the structural model. The damaged support carried part of the roof, part of the track, and one of the main evacuation corridors. Redirect them east. Rafik changed the signs. Emergency lighting shifted. Public announcements remained calm. Passengers turned, then the support failed. It did not snap, it folded. The upper curve bent inward with terrible grace. The ring dropped less than a meter, that was enough. A transit track tore from its mount. A passenger carriage struck the platform edge. Windows shattered. A fuel line ruptured. Fire spread along the service channel. Pressure alarms sounded across the station. The public displays changed automatically. Structural emergency. Follow evacuation signals. Panic began. Rafik watched crowd density rise near the eastern exits. Too many people. Open the service routes, Amara said. Hesh looked toward her. They are not public corridors. They are now. He unlocked them. Maintenance doors opened along the ring. Passengers hesitated. Then human and Avaran station staff began directing them through. The outer ring shifted again. Another support took the transferred load. Petra looked at its strain reading. It will not hold. How long, Amara asked. Minutes. Which structure takes the load after it fails? Petra highlighted the next frame, then another. A chain appeared across the model, progressive collapse, one failure increasing the load on the next, then the next, then the next. Master architect Salun Vey entered the maintenance room during the analysis. He had arrived with 3 members of his design office. No ceremonial bands. No public composure, only an architect looking at his building in distress. What failed? Petra showed him. His eyes moved across the altered frames. This is not my design. It was approved by your office, Hesh said. Salun looked toward him. Who? Petra displayed the signature. The architect recognized it. His face changed. That associate died 7 years ago. Amara pointed toward the model. Can the ring isolate the failure? Salun studied the load path. No. Hesh stared at him. You said the station had redundancy. The original ring did. This ring... Salun did not answer. He did not need to. A second support began to deform. Amara took control of the structural display. Where can we interrupt the load path? Salun moved beside her. Here. He highlighted a junction between the transit ring and the station's central spine. If the damaged section separates, the rest of the station remains stable. Hesh looked at the model. Separates. The ring segment must be cut free. There are people inside. Rafik checked the map. 1,400. How long to evacuate them? 6 minutes if movement remains orderly. Petra looked at the strain readings. They have 4. Silence. Amara turned toward Baco. Can we slow the collapse? Maybe. How? Cool the supports. Salun looked at him. They are beside an active fuel fire. Exactly. Bako opened the suppression controls. If we flood the service channels, we reduce temperature. You will also add mass, Petra said. Not enough to matter compared with the heat loss. Can the suppression system reach the frame? Not directly. Then what? Bako looked toward Hesh. Vent the water gardens. The director stared. The central gardens. They contain 40 million liters of water. They are decorative. Not anymore. Hesh hesitated, then released the emergency valves. Across Vale and Crown Station, gravity fields changed. The famous suspended rivers collapsed. Water tore through maintenance channels designed only for drainage. Pipes burst. Garden walls shattered. Millions of liters surged toward the outer ring. It reached the burning junction in less than 90 seconds. Steam exploded through the service passages. The temperature began to fall. The deforming supports slowed, not stopped. Slowed. Petra watched the readings. You bought us 2 minutes. Rafik opened every available route. Human inspectors, station staff. Transit crews, merchants. Anyone near the exits began helping direct people. No one waited for formal assignment. The crowd moved. 1,400 became 900, then 500. The ring groaned again, 300, 112. The final passenger crossed the separation junction as Petra shouted, "Now." Saloon entered the release sequence. Nothing happened. The mechanical locks had deformed. Amara looked toward the maintenance teams. Manual release. Hesh shook his head. The controls are inside the junction. How many access points? 2. Remote. No. Amara was already moving. Saloon stepped in front of her. No. She looked at him. You designed it. Yes. Then tell me where the controls are. I will release them. You are not trained for active collapse entry. It is my station. That does not make you expendable. The floor shook. No time remained. Bako grabbed a portable thermal shield. Petra took the structural scanner. Amara looked toward Saloon. You guide us. They ran. The corridor leading to the separation junction had been built as a maintenance passage. Too narrow, poorly lit. No emergency markings. Amara noticed every missing requirement as they moved through it. The irony was not comforting. The station shifted around them. Metal screamed somewhere beyond the walls. Bako's scanner showed heat rising again. The water is draining off. Petra checked the frame. 90 seconds. They reached the first release control. The handle had twisted inside its housing. Amara braced one foot against the wall. Bako joined her. Together they pulled. Nothing. Saloon's voice came through the communicator. Rotate clockwise before release. It is marked counterclockwise. The contractor reversed the assembly. Amara looked at the label. Of course they had. She rotated it the wrong way according to the instructions, then pulled. The first lock released. The corridor dropped several centimeters. Petra shouted. Second control, move. They reached it with less than 40 seconds remaining. The housing had partially collapsed. Bako forced the shield between the bent panels. Amara reached through. The metal burned through her glove. She found the handle, turned it clockwise, pulled. It did not move. Saloon. The architect answered immediately. Strike the lower housing. With what? Anything. Bako used the shield, once, twice. The housing shifted. Amara pulled again. The second lock released. The outer ring tore away from Vale and Crown Station, not explosively, slowly. The damaged segment rotated into open space, dragging broken track, burning fuel lines, shattered glass, and the remains of the famous water gardens behind it. Emergency bulkheads sealed across the station spine. Atmosphere stopped escaping. The remaining structure settled. For the first time in 7 minutes, the strain readings began to fall. Amara lay against the corridor wall. Her hand hurt. Bako's breathing filled the communicator. Petra stared at the scanner. Stable. Amara closed her eyes. Say it again. Stable. They returned to the maintenance room 20 minutes later. No one celebrated. The station had survived, most of it. The outer transit ring was gone. Several platforms had been destroyed. 38 people were seriously injured. Hundreds suffered minor injuries. 3 station workers had died during the initial failure. The number could have been thousands. That did not make 3 acceptable. Master Architect Saloon stood before the final damage map. His station remained beautiful from a distance. One side of it was now missing. Hesh joined him. The collision caused the collapse. Saloon shook his head. No. The freighter struck the pylon. The collision revealed the collapse. He looked toward the altered construction records. The cause began 11 years ago. Amara said nothing. Saloon turned toward her. If your team had not begun clearing the ring. He did not finish. Hesh did. Most of them would have died. Amara looked toward the casualty report. Some still did. The director lowered his head. Saloon studied the human emergency actions. Temporary shoring proposals had already begun. Collapse zones had been established. Fire spread had been modeled. Rescue teams were using structural markers the alien crews had never seen before. "How did you know what to do?" he asked. Petra looked toward the damaged ring. "We did not know." "You acted immediately." "Because we recognized the pattern." "From where?" Amara answered, "Other collapses." "Human collapses." "Hundreds of them." The architect stared. "You have suffered this many structural disasters." "More. And you preserved all of them." "As much as we could." "Why?" Amara looked toward the maintenance corridor, where the mislabeled release control had nearly trapped them. "So the next building does not get to make the same mistake." Outside, rescue vessels surrounded the broken section of Vale Crown Station. The station had been called a masterpiece. It probably still would be. But now the galaxy had seen what humanity meant by minimum safety. Not an accusation, not an insult, a line drawn before disaster. A line Vale Crown had never been required to cross. Chapter 4, the code written in blood. For 72 hours, Vale Crown Station did not sleep. Rescue craft moved continuously between the surviving habitat rings and the detached transit section. Engineers stabilized damaged structures. Medical teams converted hotels into emergency treatment centers. Cargo bays became temporary shelters. Restaurants became supply depots. Every available hand found work. No one cared which world they came from. Chief Structural Engineer Amara Vilas stood on an observation platform overlooking what had once been the outer transit ring. It had been the station's busiest transportation hub. Now it was a twisted skeleton of fractured girders and scorched docking rails. Emergency lights flashed through drifting debris. Beside her stood Master Architect Saloon Vey. Neither had spoken for several minutes. Finally, Saloon broke the silence. "I have designed stations for 112 standard years." Amara looked toward him. "I have never seen one of my structures fail." "You have now." "Yes." His voice contained no anger, only exhaustion. "I believed that experience was enough." The official investigation began before the fires were completely extinguished. Unlike previous compact investigations, this one included experts from dozens of worlds. Not because anyone questioned the cause, because everyone wanted to understand it. The inquiry chamber filled with architects, structural engineers, materials scientists, insurance representatives, military logistics officers, emergency responders, historians, even economists. The collapse had become too important to belong to a single profession. Director Hesh Talarin opened the proceedings. "Our objective is not to assign blame." Several delegates exchanged surprised looks. Hesh continued, "Our objective is to ensure this never happens again." Amara noticed the wording immediately. It was the first truly human sentence she had heard him speak. Petra Kovacs presented the structural timeline. Every modification appeared in chronological order. Each decision seemed reasonable. A cheaper alloy, approved. A lighter support member, approved. A simplified connection joint, approved. Deferred structural analysis, approved. Construction schedule accelerated, approved. No individual decision guaranteed disaster. Together, they guaranteed vulnerability. One of the compact investigators frowned. So no one actually made a catastrophic mistake. Petra shook her head. Everyone made a small one. She highlighted the sequence. "This is what engineers call the Swiss cheese model." The translator paused. Several alien delegates looked confused. Petra smiled. "The name matters less than the principle." She layered the decisions one above another. Every safeguard has weaknesses. One weakness is usually harmless. So is two. Sometimes three. But eventually. She aligned every decision. The holes line up. The room became very quiet. Professor Neris Thal, one of the compact's oldest architectural scholars, leaned forward. "You are suggesting disasters are cumulative." Amara answered, almost always. Not singular failures. Rarely. She walked toward the projection. The collision with the docking pylon was not the cause. The altered support members were not the cause. The missing calculations were not the cause. The absent inspection was not the cause. The lack of redundancy was not the cause. She looked around the chamber. They were all necessary. No one mistake killed those workers. The system did. Master Architect Salun Vey stood. For the first time since the collapse, he addressed the assembly without ceremony. I object. Several heads turned. Amara remained silent. Salun looked directly at her. I object to one word. She waited, system. He paused. We do not have one. Silence settled over the chamber. Then realization spread across dozens of faces. They had construction. They had engineering. They had architects. They had inspections. Sometimes, what they did not have was a construction safety system. Each project invented its own rules. Each architect chose different margins. Each government trusted different assumptions. Every successful building proved only itself, nothing else. The following morning, the Human Commonwealth delegation unpacked 37 storage crates. Compact officials assumed they contained replacement equipment. Instead, they contained books, not literature. Not engineering textbooks. Building codes, fire regulations, structural standards, accessibility requirements, electrical codes, material specifications, inspection procedures, emergency planning manuals, failure investigation reports, thousands upon thousands of pages. The delegates stared. One architect picked up a volume nearly 10 centimeters thick. This is one subject. Bako and Dilavu smiled. Only fire safety. The disbelief spread through the room. You require all of this. No. We require at least this. Professor Neris opened another volume. How can anyone remember these? Amara answered honestly, we don't. You do. No. We use them. For 3 days, human engineers answered questions. Why must doors open outward in crowded buildings? Because people push toward exits. Why require 2 stairwells? Because one might become unusable. Why specify concrete strength? Because appearance can hide weakness. Why regulate handrails? Because people fall. Why require emergency lighting? Because panic prefers darkness. Every answer began the same way. Because once, and ended the same way. People died. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Every regulation had a story, not theory, history, a bridge collapse, a school fire, a stadium crush, an apartment failure, a hospital evacuation, a tunnel filled with smoke. None of the rules had been imagined, they had been earned. Late on the 3rd evening, Hesh Talaran sat alone with one of the oldest human fire codes. He flipped through hundreds of pages, measurements, exit widths, material ratings. Alarm requirements, smoke barriers, inspection intervals. The document seemed endless. Amara found him still reading after midnight. You've been here a while. He looked up. I think I understand now. What? He held up the code. This isn't engineering. No. It's memory. He turned another page. You didn't write these rules because someone thought they were clever. No. You wrote them because someone failed to survive the alternative. Amara nodded, usually. Hesh closed the book carefully. We believed architects preserved civilization. You do? No. He looked toward the damaged station visible beyond the window. They create civilization. He rested one hand on the code. This preserves it. The investigation concluded on the 9th day. Its findings surprised almost everyone. No criminal negligence, no corruption, no deliberate deception, no reckless disregard for life. Instead, the final report contained one sentence that would become famous across compact space. The collapse resulted from individually reasonable decisions made without universally required safety standards. Master Architect Salun requested permission to add a personal statement. The chamber approved. He stood slowly. I have spent my life believing trust was the foundation of architecture. He looked toward the damaged station. I was wrong. He turned toward the delegates. The foundation is verification. Within a month, the Galactic Council convened the largest engineering conference in its history. Representatives from nearly every member civilization attended. The agenda contained only one item. Should the Galactic Compact establish minimum construction standards? The debate lasted 11 days. Architects worried creativity would suffer. Governments feared bureaucracy. Merchants complained about cost. Builders objected to delays. Insurance companies quietly supported the proposal. Emergency responders supported it loudly. Humanity did not argue very much. Instead, they showed photographs, one after another. Buildings that no longer existed. Then the buildings that replaced them, safer, stronger, built because someone had learned. On the final day, director Hesh Talarin rose to speak. Months earlier, he would have defended the old system. Now his voice carried the weight of the station that had nearly died. We have spent centuries asking, who is responsible if a building fails? He paused. I believe we have been asking the wrong question. The chamber listened. The question should be, what must every building do before we allow people inside? No one applauded, they simply voted. The resolution passed, not unanimously, but overwhelmingly. The Galactic Compact adopted the first unified construction safety code in its history. It was only 200 pages long. Human engineers smiled. It was a beginning. Centuries later, historians rarely mentioned the collapse of Valan Crown Station, not because it was forgotten, because nothing like it happened again. The first generation of architects complained constantly about inspections. The second complained about paperwork. The third accepted it as normal. The fourth wondered why anyone had ever built differently. The Human Archive recorded the lesson in a single entry. Archive entry 4728.3, the first building code. We believed architecture was the triumph of genius. Humanity taught us it was the practice of humility. Every rule in their codes represented someone who had once trusted a building that should never have been trusted. Every inspection represented an argument with certainty. Every safety margin represented a refusal to believe that excellence alone could prevent failure. The humans did not build safer because they expected greatness. They built safer because they expected someone, someday, to make a mistake. Then they designed civilization to survive it.